Do I look short? I look short, don't I? Why do I look so short? It's probably because I'm short. Hello, hi. My name is Maddie and welcome to my bookshelf. Dun dun dun. How are you guys today? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing wonderful. I hope you're having a fantastic, lovely, wonderful, amazing, fantastic, wonderful, lovely, amazing day. Yeah? So today's video is easy, it's simple. We are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in November. One small disclaimer, I'm not a big disclaimer fan, but this feels important. All of these books that I read are, they deal with some pretty heavy themes and some pretty heavy topics. I didn't mean to do that, it just happened. So I was just checking your trigger warnings, seeing what's going down in each of these books. You know, no reason to head into things blind if you don't want to or you don't feel safe doing so. I don't blame you. Okay, so this month was the month of mid books for me. It was boring and not interesting and not my thing and shitty, and the list goes on. The books just weren't the books this month. This just wasn't my month. Okay, so the first book that I read this month is 5 Total Strangers by Natalie D. Richards. So originally when I got this book, I thought that it was a different book. I thought that it was, I think it's called 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I don't know how I got them confused. I don't know what happened, but I ended up with this one. I read this book and the next two for a thrillers vlog that I ended up not putting out because it just wasn't it, fam. So this is a thriller novel that follows a girl who's trying to get home to her mother for the holidays, but all of the flights get grounded, and so she decides to get into the car with her seatmate and a bunch of other random college kids that her seatmate has met throughout her travels in the airport. So she just decides to get in this car with 5 complete strangers, and obviously because this is an unsafe decision, things start to go south real quick. This book was really not that good. I mean, that's the theme of this video, but this book was really not that good. I think it's not bad if you were an actual young adult or a teenager. I think you might enjoy this a little bit more, but I think I was just a little bit too far outside of the target audience for this to really be my thing. It felt very unfinished. We didn't get any of the villains' motive. We didn't get any of their planning process. We didn't even understand why or how they made any of the things happen in this book at all. Truthfully, all of the backstory, all of the part that would have been interesting was just taken out of the book, and instead we were left with this sort of hollow half plot kind of exploration into this girl's head that just wasn't really my thing. I just wasn't that big into it. The thing that frustrated me the most is that the thriller plot, the part of the plot that was supposed to be thrilling, was so subtle and underwhelming that I didn't even realize that was the thriller plot until I had finished the book. It was that underwhelming. So not bad, but not great, not my thing. I probably would suggest picking something else up. And if I ever read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson, I will let you know how that goes. Okay, The Blackhouse. This book is a very weird, sort of strange exploration into this woman's psyche, basically. It follows our main girl who, when she is a child, believes that she's the reincarnation of this man called Andrew McNeil. And she believes that he was drowned on a remote Scottish island. And so her mother decides to take her to this island, and while she's there, she accuses some of the villagers of murdering him. I don't know why a mom would do that, but she did that. And so fast forward to, I think she's 25, and her mother has just passed away. She's not dealing with it well at all. She's sort of spiraling in her grief, and so she decides to go back to this island to decide for herself whether or not Andrew McNeil was even real, and if she is in fact the reincarnation of him. I think she thinks that this is going to bring her some sort of sense of self and sense of peace regarding the death of her mother. This book was, actually pretty good. It is basically a masterclass in what it's like to be gaslit your entire life by all of the people that you're supposed to trust. So people like your parents or medical professionals or partners or even friends. Just what it's like to really be constantly told that you can't trust your own mind and that you don't really know what is real. And if the things around you are actually happening the way that you think they are, or if you're exaggerating them or making them a bigger deal. And sort of the aftermath of that, what that's like trying to live your life even when those people aren't in your life anymore. Which sounds really weird because it's a thriller novel. So you would think the book would mainly be about this plot. That was incredibly interesting, that I did have a really good time following. But it's actually really just an exploration of this girl's psyche. What I was most worried for while I was reading this book is that the main character is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and that is like a huge part of the book. I was worried that the author would use this mental illness, this really complex mental illness, as sort of a crutch for why we shouldn't be able to trust the main character, but in reality, it's like one small part of a lot of layers of this girl's life and this girl's psyche, and why that is just one small aspect into why she can't trust herself, which is part of the reason why we can't trust her through most of the book. And so I thought that aspect was handled really well. I think it was a pretty decent representation of bipolar disorder, and I was pleasantly surprised by that aspect. I thought that it added a lot of complexity to some of the themes, and it made it really interesting and really, easy for me to relate to because I also have bipolar disorder. My main gripe with the book, and this isn't even a gripe, I guess my main thing that I would warn you about with the book is that it is Scottish, and so they use Gaelic words and terms. And so if you don't know Gaelic at all, it can be really hard to tell if they're talking about an island or a person or a place or a building or a valley or something else. And so that can make it a little bit confusing. So I would just be wary of that going in. It didn't detract from my liking the book. It didn't distract me from the plot. It didn't make me unable to understand anything. It just was a little bit frustrating every once in a while, being like, what is this again? I don't remember. I had a good time. I think this is one of 3 books that didn't flop for me this month. Okay, next is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. So this is a story about a podcaster named Alex who on her 45th birthday meets another woman who is also celebrating her 45th birthday, so they're birthday twins. And when Alex runs into this woman again later, the woman shares with Alex that she thinks that she should be interviewed on Alex's podcast because she has this great, grand, amazing life story that she just needs to share. Alex agrees, and despite getting weird vibes from her, she continues to help her, she continues to interview her for her podcast, and even at one point, she stays at Alex's house with Alex's young children. And things quickly begin to spiral. You very quickly understand that this woman is not okay, things are unhinged, and it's gonna be real weird real fast. I feel very, very complex and complicated about this book. On one hand, I enjoyed the reading experience. I think I read it in about 2 days, and I just sat down and got sucked in, and I also half listened to it on audio, and I thought that was really, really interesting. So I had a good time with the reading experience. The actual book itself, in the ending, it was a little underwhelming for me. I don't know if thrillers just aren't my thing, mystery novels and stuff like that just aren't my thing. I think that's more the case. It ended and I was like, okay, it's done now. I didn't feel very strongly about it in that sense. And then the third thing that makes it more complicated is that this book humanizes somebody who does really grotesque and disgusting and disturbing things. And it's not that I think that people shouldn't be humanized regardless of what they've done. Obviously, I think that people should be treated like humans regardless of what they've done. But the way that this woman is humanized, the way that she's made to be not that bad in some instances, but really horrible in others, and just the whole thing gave me weird, icky feelings. There was a lot of things that she did that I have a hard time forming opinions on whether or not I just have a hard time forming opinions about this book, specifically the woman that Alex interviews for the podcast. I just don't know how I feel about her, and so it made the book very icky and strange for me. I am more sensitive to this kind of thing. I don't deal well with like violence and gore and horror, and I struggle a lot with wanting to know whether somebody is good or bad, regardless of understanding that everybody is nuanced. And so if you aren't sensitive to that stuff, if you don't struggle with that kind of thinking the way that I do, you might end up really liking this book. It was mixed media. There was like excerpts from the podcast interview, there's excerpts from other people, and so you end up getting a lot of perspectives that really helps you understand the story, and I think that's pretty sick. But I couldn't vibe with it. It just wasn't my thing, but I don't think that made it a bad book. So the next set of books I read for a romance vlog, which will be out next week, hopefully. So I won't spend a ton of time on each of them because I go into them more in depth in next week's video. The first one that I read is You Again. So this is a When Harry Met Sally gender swapped retelling. And it's really about two people who just like keep missing each other and how they try to make their relationship work. I didn't like this book. I didn't like this book. In the reading vlog, I give it a 3 stars, but as I was sitting down to script out this video, I realized that it's really more of a 2-star for me. It just wasn't good. There are things about the book that I really enjoyed. I liked how funny it was. There's a lot of quippy remarks and quippy banter, and I think that our main girl has some really sweet relationships with her friends around her, which I really enjoyed seeing play out. But my main 2 gripes about this book were, one, that if the girl was the guy, there was a lot of things that she did to our main guy that just simply we wouldn't be okay with. That because it was presented specifically as a gender swapped retelling, it sort of painted all of her actions in this kind of like edgy, everybody's a bad guy, it doesn't matter that she's a girl, like women can be bad too, light, but was eventually accepted in the end regardless of her like not deserving that acceptance and that forgiveness. And so it just like made her actions kind of weird and like icky to me. It felt kind of like she was mean for the sake of being edgy, and if she was a guy, nobody would want to read that. Like we would all be like, who is this arrogant dickhead? Like, you know what I mean? And so it was weird. I didn't like that it just rubbed me the wrong way. The second thing that I have issues with, which did not rub me the wrong way, it was downright offensive, is the main guy. It's a running joke and a plot point that he is a white man, so he gets white privilege, and he is a nepo baby because his father gave him a restaurant. And he actively throughout the books denies white privilege, denies that he gets privilege as a man. He like plays the victim a lot. He cries and whines about his father having given him the restaurant. And a literal plot point in the book is that he fires our main girl's best friend, who is a person of color, and it sets her back in her career like a lot of years. And that is brought up multiple times as something that he contributed to, because he's the reason why she got set back, and he just like refuses to acknowledge his like part in that, and he refuses to acknowledge that he didn't deal with the same things as her because he is a white man. And in the last like third of the book, they had the absolute nerve and gall to try to turn that into his redemption arc, and it ended up coming across as this like half-assed apology that wasn't even really apology. I don't think there was ever a time in which this man sat down with this woman and said, I am sorry for the troubles that I have caused you in your life. Instead, they just start working together, and it kind of gets pushed onto the back burner. And I hated it. The next book that I read is The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen, and this is a second chance. Oh, I think I have it. I do have it. I actually have this one. This is a second chance gay historical romance, And it follows two guys, Garth and Joss, who have one like lovely, wonderful week together in London, and it kind of falls out towards the end. They have an argument and they part their ways. And fast forward a little bit, Garth's father has just passed away, and he is passing down his title and his inheritance and everything to Garth. And so Garth has to pack his stuff up, move to his father's house, and deal with his father's affairs and everything they did in Regency era. It turns out that Josh lives where Garth just moved. They reconnect, they rekindle, all that fun stuff, right? That's pretty much the extent to which I have to say about this book. It was fine. It was okay. I think if you like Regency era romance, you were gonna like this one. I think that if you like romance that's a little bit more substancy, you're gonna like it, because that was my main issue with the book. These two men have wonderful communication skills, and they have wonderful emotional intelligence, which means that they make up pretty quickly, actually, and it feels really authentic and genuine and appropriate for the situation. But that happens in the first third of the book, and then the rest of the book is like this weird quasi-mystery thing surrounding Garth's father, and Josh helps him to figure out what goes on. And so you don't spend that much time actually reading about their romance. You spend a majority of your time reading about the mystery, which wasn't what I came here for, and so it was disappointing to me. But I think if you like that sort of stuff, if you like your romance with a little bit more plot to it, you would like this one. The next book is My Dark Romeo, and I got 62 pages into this book and I DNF'd it because the main guy is misogynistic, controlling, possessive, a dickhead, and abusive. And I hated him with my whole heart. He was disgusting. And I understand that dark romance, your main guy is going to be a little bit rude and a little bit mean, but there's a really big difference between our main guy being standoffish because like he didn't get enough love as a child versus him being an actually abusive man. And this man was actually abusive, and I cannot get behind that. I hate when men are presented in this way in a romance novel, because not only does it tell women that this is something that they should endure, but actively pine for and actively desire and seek out. And I can't get with that. And the more that I think about it, the more angry I get. I talk about it a lot in my romance vlog, so if you want to see me rage about that, you can watch that video. Wildfire. Okay, so this is by Hannah Grace, who wrote Icebreaker. I read Icebreaker last year when it came out, and I loved it. And I loved this one just as much. It was fantastic. This book follows Aurora and Russ, who are just these two very sweet, very kind beings who deserve so much love and happiness, and they find it with each other, and it's super sweet. It's a second chance kind of romance thing. They have a one-night stand, and things don't end how either of them wanted them to. And turns out they are working at the same summer camp. And so they kind of get a chance to rekindle into a friendship, and slowly that friendship starts to develop into a little bit more. But the twist is that they are both counselors, and so there's a rule that counselors can't have romantic relationships with each other. And Russ is absolutely determined to follow the rules so that he doesn't have to move home with his family for the summer. And Aurora is trying to turn over a new leaf in her life. She wants to stop drinking as much, stop sleeping around with random guys in an attempt for like some sort of external validation, and she wants to feel more confident in herself as a person. And so the book is a romance, absolutely, but it's also about these two people trying to make themselves better so that they can be healthier in this relationship together. This book saved me in my time of need. It comforted me when I thought all hope was lost. It made me laugh when I needed nothing more. And it provided me with some really great smut scenes that were nice. I had a good time. My rating is probably inflated because of that, and I don't care. So this is the big one, right? This is the guy of the video. Kind of. So Iron Flame by Rebecca Ross. Nope, her last name is Yaros. Anyway, Iron Flame. So this is like the big thing of the year. Fourth Wing got massive. This is the sequel. And so I don't want to give you any spoilers to Fourth Wing, so I'm not going to tell you what this book is about. But there are a lot of reviews about this book out on the internet. So I'm actually just only going to say one thing about this book. In my personal opinion, this book is the epitome of TikTok hype. It exists in the world because of TikTok hype, and I don't think that hype around a book is a bad thing. I think hype around a book is cool. And I think that there are a lot of really great books that come out of TikTok and a lot of authors that get their start and they get their ability to be an author because of people in the community sharing stuff about it. I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I do think that the publishing industry exploited Rebecca Yarros to come out with this book faster than she was ready for and faster than the book itself was ready for. When you're reading it, you can tell that she was rushing while she was writing. You can tell that she was just trying to pack in as much information as possible, almost like she was scared that she was going to forget it if it wasn't written down. You can tell that the editing was really rushed because it wasn't edited that well. There's plot holes. There's a lot of missing connections between things. Sometimes something will happen and it'll be a really big deal, and then 2 chapters down the line, it's basically forgotten about. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't resolved. There was a couple of plot twists that came up in the beginning that I'm not sure why they're there because they ended up meaning nothing towards the end. And this is a 5-book series, so there's a lot of time for this stuff to develop, but it just didn't feel cohesive enough for one novel. If I'm being honest, I feel like this probably should have been split into 2 novels and developed more, because a lot of the things that happened needed breathing room that it didn't get. All of that being said, I still had a great time reading it. I am going to continue the series. I actually think that I'm going to reread Fourth Wing so that I can better understand Iron Flame, because there is so much going on in it. But I still had a great time. I still enjoyed it. I do plan to continue the series, and I am still a really big fan of Rebecca's. I have mad respect for the woman. She cranked out a 600-page novel in, by my calculations, I think about 3 months. And that's incredible. That's amazing. And for all of the things that I just said were, not the best about it, there's a million other things that make this book just as great. So, like I said, there's a ton of reviews out there online. If you want to read a happy, positive review, just type in the name of the book in YouTube and you'll find it, I promise. That's just how I felt about it, and I don't think it's fair to Rebecca. And I don't think that the publishing industry should have done that to her. I think they should have given her an opportunity to really craft the book that I think she would have wanted to write. But I don't know. I'm not Rebecca. I'm not sure. This isn't completely speculation. While I was looking up the publication dates for the video, I did run across an article where Rebecca was talking about how she wrote Fourth Wing and then another book for an entirely different series and then Iron Flame all right on top of each other, and it really started to take a toll on her body. I'm using that article, my opinions about the book, and the sheer closeness of the publication dates to speculate that I think that she just published this before she was really ready because her editor and people were pushing her to do so. And I think it shows in the book, and that's kind of a shame, in my opinion. Still had a great time, but I was a little sad. Alright, you guys, thanks for hanging out with me for a teeny bit. I hope that your day is wonderful and that you find that thing you've been looking for. If you could like, comment, subscribe, do that whole thing, that would really, really help me out. Okay. Yeah, I don't like self-promo, so I will see you guys somewhere else on the internet. Bye.